digging it, she can dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it. We're all digging it because it's NH Unscripted. Who couldn't dig that? I am your digging it host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the water country like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM for you happy, blessed folks down in Manchester. Gather the kids around the Motorola and fire up the Swanson TV dinners because we have a hot one coming in today. First, let me thank my sponsor, Lakes Region Fence in Guilford. You know, it's almost Valentine's Day, and nothing says love like a brand new fence. Yeah, Matt's going to want his money back after that one. Anyway, anybody can do chocolates, right? And flowers? Come on, come on. Think of the smiles you're going to get and the hugs when your partner looks out the window and sees that brand new glistening fence around the pool. Break down, you fool. Go out there to lrfence.com, look around, press the button, and get a free estimate. lrfence.com, they have reams and reams and reams. Well, they say reams anymore? No. Megabytes and megabytes and megabytes of photos that you can go through. lrfence.com. Choose one. Yeah, you know, wood, PVC, vinyl, whatever. They do it all. Dog kennels, pool fences. Yeah, I forget what else they do. Anyway, lrfence.com. That's Lake Region Fence. Matt, we thank you guys so much for sponsoring NH Unscripted. In the house is my long time friend. One of my bestest ever friends, Kevin Collins. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine, Ray.
It is so good to see you.
Yeah, when we were doing shows together, Nixon was still in office.
That's a fit. Oh, no, it's not. I am so glad you came by. I'm so glad that you brought up the subject, by the way, which you wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to say, oh, by the way, Randy said we got to get together sometime.
Absolutely.
So I know we got to do that. NH Unscripted originally was started so that I could talk to people in the entertainment industry, mainly theater, but it branched out a little bit into film and some other stuff. But because I wanted people to understand the background stuff, the mechanics, the minutia of acting. And so I brought in directors and choreographers and set designers and all that. Because you see a show, but you don't really understand because we don't care. I mean, basically, when you'll see a show, you don't care what the set designer had in mind. But I thought it would be great for people to understand that. And so it had its footing originally in that. And then it kind of deviated as, you know, I'm trying to run out of guests, and so I end up, you know, never mind. But when I contacted you, you had some ideas right along the original intent that NH Scripted had. So why don't you go point by point, and let's do it. Let's get into this. And
yeah, as I said, when you and I first did theater back in 1972, it was really OJT, on the job training, and we really had to figure things out on our own. I mean, I remember the director, David Bossier, when we were doing Turgenev's Month in the Country. He said, I need a footbridge. And we were like, you and I were like, we're actors. No, we have to build the set, too. And we couldn't figure out how to build a footbridge. And I think you said, let's go get a six-pack and figure this out. And we did.
What? I said that?
Yeah. And that was pretty much what theater was, because that was the 1970s. Everything was experimental. It wasn't, things are now so digitized and they're high tech that a lot of people don't get a chance to learn the basics of their craft. And that's understandable. I mean, the world has changed in that way, and we'll come to that in a bit. But I think what's happened in a way that we don't understand is that a lot of community theaters are trying to figure out who they are and what they are. I mean, the fact is we're doing the same old shows we've always done. We're doing Arsenic and Old Lace. We're doing Sound of Music. We're doing British sex farces. But that was sometimes leads you to believe that things are functionally, that is, in the nuts and bolts of putting on a show, is the same because the shows we're doing are the same. But a lot of things have changed now. The demographics have changed. And so we forget that community theater was not invented. It came out of the community. And the community was just like River City, Iowa, from the Music Man. Mayor Shin and his wife were, and Aunt B would be doing the, the annual pageant on Founders Day, that kind of thing. And so a lot of community theaters came out of the fact that people wanted to have live theater. There wasn't an opportunity to get to it. You could drive down to Boston and maybe catch a show that's on tour. But for the most part, if you wanted to see a live show, you're going to see it at the local high school, put on by the local community theater.
Yeah.
And that would draw them in because that's what it was. And so in a sense, you had your everybody from the postman to the milkman to the lawyers to the mayor, whatever, might be involved in the show. And it's simply, that was really what it was. And so the audience came because their friends were in the show. But we no longer live in those kind of communities. As somebody once said, we live in networks. And when you add to that, especially with, I'm involved with the Garrison Players, which is down on the Seacoast area, and it's in Rollinsford, but it's really Dover. Last year, of the top 10 highest-selling homes in the Seacoast area, 7 were in Dover, and we're talking about homes over $1 million. Now, when I got involved with Garrison the first time back in the 1990s, there was nothing like that. And Garrison Theater was thriving because of what I just said, that the people in the community came to see the members of the community on stage in the community. But the community has changed now. I mean, what do you do when more and more people are able to afford $1 million homes? Are they part of the community? They might be, but it's not really quite the same thing. So a community theater has to rethink what its niche is, what its function is. Last week, I was at the Players Ring down in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And they struggled for a number of years.
They did.
But recently, they've been exploding. They've got, and I think it's because they found their niche.
Yeah.
They've looked at, I don't know if this has happened accidentally or happened deliberately, but they looked at their clientele, they looked at their community, and they realized that they needed to have more topical dramas. They needed to have more subjects that really reflected the kind of things that mattered to, the new generation, the millennials, maybe even Gen Z, and certainly Generation X. You and I, we're the boomers, and of course people make fun of us. Say, "Okay, boomer," we've heard that line before.
And we're handsome boomers.
Yeah, handsome boomers. Yeah. But the fact is, and there's a certain amount of resentment about boomers. But the difference is, boomers, we believe that we wanted to dedicate ourselves to our job. We wanted to have a livelihood that we could live, eat, breathe, and sleep, whatever it might have been. That's not this newer generation, and that's not a slam on them. That's just a basic truth for them. They don't want to be dictated by their job. So in a sense, so that's one thing. But the other thing is, of course, that there are issues that are so important to them. Whether we're talking about LGBTQ plus issues about refugees, issues about gender identification, issues about race, etc., women's issues, you name it. And so the Players Ring has encouraged playwrights and people who are in the theater to either create or to bring in those kind of shows. In addition to, they are doing the traditional fare, and it's packing them in because it understands that they have to respond to the audience that they've got.
Yikes! Already? Well, I guess it's time for fried bologna sandwiches and chips. We have to dance our way out to a break. I have my bestest friend in here, Kevin Collins, from the Garrison Players. We are breaking down a lot. We're just scratching the surface because I have questions for him. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I am your host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the mountaintop digs of the WKXL studios in Concord, 1450 AM, 103.9 FM. And you bliss souls in Manchester, yeah, you're listening to us at 101.9 FM. And yeah, we got a URL. Yeah, try this one, nhtalkradio.com. Yeah, beat that dog. We'll be back in a minute. Mama told me you can't hurry, love. Yeah, but we have NH Unscripted to take its place. I am your Diane Ross-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the monk-like conditions of the WKXL studios in Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, and 101.9 FM for you Manchesterites. I guess that's a word, kind of. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL where you can find a button to listen to the show live. We come to you every Wednesday and Friday at 9 a.m. Or you can find the archives of this show and all the other ones out there. But don't go there now. We got gold. Kevin Collins is in the house. Baby, fire away. Where were we?
We were talking about finding one's niche as a community theater.
Yes, yeah. Hold right there. Put the brakes on. Drop the anvil on the coyote right there. So let me ask you, what made you think about this topic, first of all? What was happening or not that you said, I think we're living in a different age and time, and because there are a lot of people who aren't thinking this way. There are a lot of people who are just like going with it. I mean, it's an evolutionary kind of thing in the theater. They just rock and roll with whatever's happening out there. What was going on that made you go, I need to chat to somebody about this?
Yeah. This is something that's always fascinated me, and it came about when I started teaching high school. That there was a difference between this is what. Let me back up. When I first started teaching, I was still in my 30s, so I was maybe 12 or 15 years older than the students that I had.
It was like last week, right?
Yeah, it was like last week, and so the age gap wasn't that much different in terms of our experiences, but they reacted differently to the same stimuli that I was facing.
Very interesting.
And so I began to sort of, I was very interested in figuring out who are we and how we got to be this way. And I actually literally built a course around that when I came to New Hampshire and started teaching at St. Thomas Aquinas. I created a course called Contemporary American Studies, which was subtitled, Who Are We and How Do We Get to Be This Way? And so we started to explore the things that made us be who we are. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because it'll take us away from theater. But when I started to explore this back in the 1990s, and we're working our way backwards, that the thing that hit me was that the origin of the second half of the 20th century in terms of how we were as a community, as a society, was probably founded in the weeks between Victory in Europe Day and Victory in Japan Day. I know this is going to sound strange, but Victory in Europe Day was the result of hundreds of thousands of men, women working together and marching their way across Europe in what was still kind of an analog world, so that, if you wanted to, conquer twice as much territory, you drop twice as many bombs, or you put twice as many soldiers in the field. So it was a nice little mathematical model. And that was a triumph of the American way of doing things. And then 8, 10, 12 weeks later, Victory in Japan Day was the result of a handful of slide rule pocket protected nerds who did more with 2 bombs than people had done. And so, in a sense, you've got this great dichotomy on the one era ended and a new era began. And if you look at, to keep the idea of entertainment going forward, if you look at the science fiction films of the 1950s, they were always about that, because when the monster would come and the soldiers couldn't do anything about it, they had to turn to the local scientist, and he would come up with a ray gun or whatever. And,
Yeah.
I mean, even the Hulk was, Bruce Banner's, if you remember the original comic book, Bruce Banner was this skinny, nerdy little guy whose girlfriend was the daughter of the colonel who ran the army base, who couldn't stand Bruce Banner. But, when push came to shove, the radioactive Hulk was much more powerful than the soldiers were. So so I was always interested in the fact that things that we always think that the things that affect us are the things that are proximate. What I mean by what happened last week, or what happens nearby, or what's happening in theater. But it's probably something else, that if you work your way through the Cartesian lines, that takes you to where you are. And I think if boards are going to solve this, if theaters are going to solve this issue, they need to have a good board. And that board needs to be what they call a generative board. Once again, I don't mean to bore people with this, but there are 3 functions that a board of governors had. One is fiduciary, making sure that people are paying the royalties and that somebody's, taking care of the bills, for building a set, et cetera, and the costumes are cleaned at the end of a show. And then there's the strategic function, which is, okay, you got a problem. The roof is leaking. Somebody quit. Somebody's got COVID, And so they have to figure out how to handle that. And normally what happens is that the director and the actors are really dealing with that. And by the time the board gets involved, the problem is pretty much solved. But the third thing is generative. And that really is, they have to ask the right questions. What do we want to be? What's our clientele? What's our audience? What's happening in the world today? And some people want escapism. Some people want arsenic and old lace. Some people want, funny enough, on the way to the forum.
Yes, one of my favorites.
But if you're looking at a shrinking audience, if you're looking at shrinking participation, you have to ask yourself the questions. Who are we, and how do we get to be this way?
So are you saying the problem is shrinking audiences and shrinking people who are going to do it as an activity? Are you finding that?
Yeah. I'm finding that people don't... The people who want to do it for fun are our age. Mm-hmm. Oh. So that...
There's so many plays you can do them with walkers and canes.
Exactly. I mean, you look and you see the leading man is, in his 50s, and the ingenue role is played by someone who's 19, and all of a sudden you've got a lawsuit, practically. Back in the 1970s, that really wasn't an issue at any level. And I think that was because there was a process by which a person became a professional actor. And I did mention this in my email to you, that when you and I were growing up, that there were all sorts of places. There was community theater, there was summer stock, there was Shakespeare festivals, there were all kinds of local little theaters, regional theaters, right up to the big ones like the Goodman Theater and the Guthrie Theater. And then there was off Broadway. And so, I mean, that you didn't necessarily have to follow that process, but there was ample opportunity to learn your craft. And your craft was going to be playing in front of a live audience and with the skills that are involved there. And that's disappeared. A lot of those theaters have closed. And the opportunity to go out there and make even a lousy living at acting has shrunk, at least when it comes to theatrical acting. I mentioned a friend of mine, Bram Pope, that I got my Master of Fine Arts with. recently retired as the head of the theater and dance department at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas. And he's been at the forefront of trying to convince these programs you cannot train kids the way that we were trained. He and I were both trained for what he calls the LORT theater, process, the licensed organization of regional theaters. And he and I have performed in those theaters, but those are gone. Most of them are gone. Where the niche is now is in streaming, small streaming, videos. I mean, you've done some shows on video, and they cost next to nothing. As a matter of fact, in yesterday's New York Times, there was an article about this new initiative called Real Short, REEL short, Real Short Films, and they're like 1 minute long, and it's really huge in the East, Far East, that is. And there's a woman who's trying to get a jump started here in the United States, and we'll see if it takes off.
It's called TikTok, isn't it?
Well, yeah. But this is you're watching 1 minute soap operas. I mean, it's fascinating. I actually downloaded the app yesterday, and they have all of these. Like let me see if I can find the one that's up here. Yeah, I Married a Replacement Bride. 30 Days Till I Marry My Husband's Nemesis. Her Desired Alphas. Married for Green Cards.
But what are these, love. Though? Are they? They're made up?
They're soap operas. They're 1 minute long, and you watch them.
Put a pin right there. We are grazing in the grass, baby. Woo! Pulling it apart. Still not deep yet. Still not deep. We got a lot of rabbit holes to cover. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I am your happy to be out of bed host, Ray Dudley, wearing PJs with the feet in them. We are coming to you from the Taj Mahal-like digs of the WKXL studios, deep, deep, deep in the heart of Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. Kevin Collins and I are chit-chatting about theater. Yeah. Woo! Baby, almost choked on a Pez. Yikes! Happy I am to be out of the home. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I am your not quite needing a walker yet host, Ray Dudley. Get there, though. The home says they got them in the back room somewhere in case I ever need them. We are coming to you from the YMCA-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord, 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, and in Manchester, 101.9 FM. NHTalkRadio.com is where you can find the button to listen live or go out and dig through the archives, baby. In house with me is my bestest friend, Kevin Collins. We are down and dirty, baby, on the evolution of theater and acting. Kevin, are you... So, on a tangential side note here, this evolution, I've even noticed it having to do auditions for, like, commercials. I used to have to drive down to Boston, 2-hour ride, wait in line, sit on a bench, do it. Now it's all self-taping, all of it. Makes me crazy, but there is this evolution, and I know what you're talking about with all of the technology and stuff that kids are used to nowadays, although I don't... Are you saying that theater itself needs to change the programs, their offerings, or what is... I don't know as I'm jumping to a solution here, but we haven't quite even delineated the problem. But
there was I remember reading books by a lot of cultural critics, and they're always willing to admit that they can identify the problem. They're not really sure, but they can figure out what the solution is.
Okay.
And that's probably true here. And I don't think that the issue is that they need to change. They need to understand once again what it is that and who they're trying to appeal to.
Do they care? I mean, are most of them even to that point where they're like, hey, all the gray hairs coming and we need to continue to do?
Yeah, I think at some point they reach a critical stage. You know once again, when you and I were growing up, we were surrounded by people who were World War II veterans. There aren't that many left, and there are no World War I veterans. I mean, there were World War I veterans when you and I were kids. And
he had to say that.
Yeah, but at some point, that there's you reach a tipping point where you find that no matter how hard you're trying, the people aren't coming in. It's not because you're not doing a good job. It's not because you're not giving a quality product, as the theater, or even good plays, good actors, good directors. But the people aren't coming in, and that's the problem with thinking that it's something that you're doing wrong. And it's not necessarily something that you're doing wrong. It's just that you have to understand, try to figure out what it is that's happening.
Is this a societal change kind of thing?
It's always been that way. The fact is, people aren't very good at it. I remember when I was, as you know, a little bit of my background. I was a teacher, and then I became the principal at St. Thomas Aquinas High School. And one day we sat down with some former students and some professors, and one of the things that one of our former students who was in the sciences said, that the one thing that we would need to teach our kids is statistics and data analysis. Because there's a lot of information out there in terms of numbers. Mm-hmm. But one, nobody's compiling it properly. A few people are compiling it properly. And
Elon Musk.
And even fewer are interpreting that data well. And we had this woman who was phenomenal, and she wanted to teach in the high school. That was her job before she came to St. Thomas Aquinas.
What, analytics?
Data analytics.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was the corporate world, and she wasn't happy. She was enjoying teaching. But she wasn't teaching for more than a few months when one of the corporations came to her and just offered her so much money. She said, I couldn't turn it down. She actually tried to come back one more time, and they offered so more money.
What?
Yeah, so there's
happens to me all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and and so I think that's a real problem, because it's like Netflix and Blockbuster. That's a classic example. Blockbuster thought that they were going to corner the market and they were there, and they could ride that gravy train forever. And the last Blockbuster, I forget where it was, somewhere out west, finally closed.
So forever ended in like 1990 something.
Yeah, exactly. And what happened was, you have these people who are professionals, make a lot of money, and they couldn't read the tea leaves. And I mean, how does that happen? How does a multi-million-dollar company like Blockbuster not see where we're headed? Let me backtrack on this. I always found this fascinating. The old cell phones, the flip phones, didn't really occupy our lives the same way that the iPhone does.
Correct.
And the reason for that is what's the legacy of the old flip phones? It's the telephone, the legacy of the telephone. And what I mean by that is, you remember the opening song in Bye Bye Birdie? Hello, Mrs. Johnson. This is Harvey. Can I speak to Penelope, please? You
I'm going to deny I know that.
And so it's all these high school kids talking on the phone, because that was, so you get on the phone and you talk to your friends. It didn't, mom and dad didn't do that. We didn't, you were businessmen. You might want to, sell, buy, sell, and that's it. And so that was a legacy. And if there was a screen on it where you played Snake or some of those other, maybe Tetris, it was the idea that there was a screen inside a telephone. But when Steve Jobs invented the iPhone, it's a phone inside a screen. Mm-hmm. So now the legacy of the iPhone is TV. So it shouldn't surprise us that we got addicted to our cell phones in the same way we got addicted to our TVs. We call it a phone, but it's not. It's a portable television. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the thing we have to understand about why. Excuse me. It's so important to understand the world that you're living in, because eventually the world is going to be run by the millennials and Gen Z. And their experience of the world and what they want out of the arts, etc., is not what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, certainly there's always going to be some Gen Zs and millennials who want to perform on stage. But if they want to move beyond the community theater into performing, it's not going to be on another stage. And maybe they might become aware of that. Maybe they won't. But if
Are you saying theater acting is moving more digital and moving away from the stage?
acting in general is going to be primarily digital. I mean, that's that. You and I were always compelled by the theater, and there's always going to be people who are compelled by the theater. But I mean, what draws people to the Broadway stage? Probably that there is a movie star who happens to have the lead role.
Yeah.
You know,
This is interesting. Andrew Gibson, who's running the board right in there, is in a show in Boston right now for the Evil Dead, and it's called Evil Dead HD. Is that correct, Andrew? HD? Because they're using...
Yep. Yeah,
right?
it is the... so there's two different versions. There's the original Evil Dead the Musical that came out in 2003, and this is basically the same show, but they call it the HD Tour.
Because?
Because it utilizes an LED wall and floor paneling that all of the set and everything is done digitally.
Is that incredible?
yeah, that's incredible. I remember seeing,
And that's just one stage in the metamorphosis of what you're talking about.
and look at the shows that are hot now. They are either TV shows that have been turned into musicals,
Porn.
or is that the P word he mentioned?
Dang it.
Movies that weren't like Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Saturday Night Fever on stage, and it's like it's almost as if there is that theater used to begin and end in theater. By that I mean is that you had playwrights and songwriters and lyricists, and they got together down there on Broadway, and they went on tour to Toronto and Boston, or Peoria or wherever, and then they went to off Broadway and they got out to Broadway, and there was that process. Now they got a ready-made product like Mean Girls. You take Mean Girls, you add some music to it. The music doesn't even have to be very good; it just has to be upbeat.
Oh, man, we need to flesh this out. One more segment. This is incredible. Baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet. I am your host, Ray Dudley. Almost Bachman Turner Overdrive-ish, if you want to get into it. You are listening to NH Unscripted. We are coming to you from the mountaintop bunkers of the WKXL studios in Concord, 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL. We are pulling apart the evolution of theater and acting. We're going to be right back. Me and Kevin Collins. Mustard on my shirt from a fried bologna sandwich, but I'm okay. No one can see me. All the world over, it's so easy to see. People everywhere just want to be free. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I am your rascals-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the digs, the not ever overly ostentatious digs of the WKXL studios in Concord, 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL. Kevin Collins, my very, very, very good, oldest, dearest friend, is in the studio with me, just chit-chatting away at the time. Kevin, what do you got there for the Garrison players?
Yeah.
Fire away, baby.
Just like to take a moment to plug our shows that are coming up. We have Peter Schaffer's The White Liars and Black Comedy, 2 one-acts. That's opening up in the 1st of March, running from the March 1 to March 10, directed by Alex Bickerstaff, who last year presented a play at the Players Ring called C-33 about the trial that Oscar Wilde was involved in. And then in May, we have a play called True Crimes, written by Glenn Kosker.
Yes, I know Glenn.
Yeah, it's an original play. And that's going to be performed, as I say, in May. It's a murder mystery, and it's directed by Mike Doyle, who has done a number of shows at Garrison Players. And then in June, our Youth Ed Theater, which is an exceptional youth theater, the high school kids will be doing 9 to 5 the musical, and the little kids will be doing A Year with Frog and Toad.
Oh, that's
and
popular.
Those will be in June. So I just want to make sure that if you get a chance, check out www.garrisonplayers.org and all the information that's there. And you can even purchase tickets. Thank you.
Duties dispersed. Fire away, baby. So are they all digital out there now? Are you guys Frog and Toads digital?
I wish. Yeah, we did. One of the interesting things is that because as part of my job with Garrison Players, I'm the production manager. I make sure that the contracts are signed and the bills are paid. Especially Disney, they will let you stream their shows for free. What I mean is that you pay the royalties to perform, but you don't have to pay anything extra to stream it because they know that, especially in this post-COVID era,
What?
yeah, that they will let you stream the shows, and they won't
While
charge
you're
you.
performing them, they'll let you live stream them?
No, I don't think that I think what happens is you record it and then you upload it and you know.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Without having to pay extra royalties.
Yeah, don't pay extra royalties for it, because they're expecting there are people who don't want to, Grandma and Grandpa want to see the little kids in the show,
Yeah.
but they don't want to catch COVID, so they stay at home.
But it's not like Disney did not rob you of
No, which is unusual because Disney
Yeah.
Disney charges you for everything.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and if you violate their intellectual property, they'll sue you even though you're only 12
in
years
a
old.
heartbeat.
Yeah,
In a heartbeat.
but
So where do you think this ends up, or does it not end up? Because it's a constant evolution. It's the way humanity is, right? Things are always changing. Do you see something happening that in the near future that, I mean, theaters are theaters, right? Are they, most of them?
I think I think one thing is going to happen is that if a community theater, a theater group doesn't have their own building,
Which is many.
which is and that they're going to struggle the most. I mean, Garrison Players is very fortunate that with the foresight of a bunch of people, they were able to buy this old Grange building, and they raised money, and they got an L-chip loan to turn it into a theater, and they're very fortunate. So I think that they will always survive, and they will always do well. Throughout COVID, they stayed solvent, and a lot of other theaters went under.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a problem of the expense of the theater. But as long as you have that, that's why it's called real estate,
good
rather,
point.
and it's it's something you can hang your hat on, and as long as it's there, you can be flexible because if you don't necessarily, if the same people who have always wanted to do theater, are unable to do the theater, then you just have other groups come in. As long as you have a venue, and they're dying, people are dying for venues. I mean, once again, as I talk about Players Ring, they put on 7 shows. People, in the course of a year.
I love the Players Ring, too.
Yeah, and the thing is that it always, what's interesting, it always was that you rehearsed someplace else. The last truly professional show I did was with the Hartford Stage Company a long time ago. I was in Cymbeline, Shakespeare's Cymbeline, and we rehearsed upstairs in a BMW garage, and then we moved into the theater. Where we are now is that, unfortunately, what that means with the theater is that we're building the set,
Yeah.
literally around the actors. That's the way. Rather than them having that move-in week and them taping it up. But that's. But
So do you think they'll still be doing like the Oklahomas and all that, or do you see it morphing into more of some digitally, like the Evil Dead HD there?
I think what'll happen is that there'll always be a place for the Oklahomas because they're even you don't have to be 70 years old to enjoy Oklahoma. But I think what's compelling the kids is that they want that Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
They want Mean Girls. And what's always true is that there were more women involved in theater at that level, college and high school, but in particular, than there were men. But it was, theater was like Shakespeare. There are 47 male roles and 2 female roles, and even those are played by guys.
Yeah.
But now there are shows that focus on women and women's issues.
So you're saying the topics would change
the
to be
topics
more
would change,
contemporary.
Not just more contemporary, but the old chestnuts are going to be few and far between. That's just the nature of the game, and there are so many things that, and as you said, we could talk about this forever. Our attention spans are different, and it's not just because of the cell phone. You go back to MTV, and if you look at MTV and the way that those music videos were made with all those fast cuts, switching back and forth.
Yeah.
And if you were to watch like an old TV show on MeTV, and you sat there with the stopwatch and you counted the number of camera angle changes that in a given minute, there might be 15 or 20. You get to a modern show, and there's probably 50 or 60 or 100 in a minute.
Right.
They're constantly changing. The whole dynamic is faster, and you've got to be more on top of what your audience wants. And I think, we always had that field of dreams attitude. If you build it, they will come. But that's just not true anymore.
So this could be a positive, though, right? So in a world where everything is fast and quick and sharp and has edges to it, could it not be said that the positive side of theater is that it slows you down?
Yes. That's a very good point. Yeah.
Of course it's a good point. I made it.
Yeah.
Welcome to my show.
This is, after all, your show. It's not the Kevin Collins show. It's the Ray Dudley's Unscripted show. No, you're right. It's a very good point. And I think that we'll always need to slow down. But it's like reading a book. You can listen to books on tape, or you can sit there with a book, and there's something to be said for the comfort of sitting and turning the pages and reading and getting lost in the words, which is so much different than watching something. Both my wife and I taught English, and my wife would say to the kids, read the book, don't watch the movie, not because that's cheating, but if you watch the movie, you're watching somebody else's interpretation of the words.
Yeah.
If you read the book, you have the voices inside your head, and you're seeing it, because if you really know how to read well, you don't really even see the words. A good reader is reading the book, but what's happening is they're playing they're watching a movie in their head, and they're hearing the voices in their ears. One of the interesting things was when I was teaching. Once again, this feels like a sort of a side story. I noticed that my students, when I would give them a quiz on the reading that they had the night before, and I could see them staring off into space, and they were looking, and I realized eventually they were imagining the page in front of them and trying to figure out where the words were. And the kids who were good readers would literally, they could answer the question right away because they were just rewinding the movie in their head. So there's a kind of a good reader gets lost in the words. And a person who struggles just doesn't know how to translate words into images.
Oh my gosh!
Maybe we can go on this forever.
Oh, I know. Quickly give out the URL for the Garrison Players again.
It's www.garrisonplayers.org.
My gosh, there must be 50 ways to leave your lover, but only one way to get NH Unscripted. Yeah, baby. Yeah, do I make you randy, baby? Do I? I am your happy to be out of bed host, Ray Dudley. You are listening to NH Unscripted, and we are coming to you from deep from the underground bunkers of the WKXL studios 1450 AM, 103.9 FM Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester. And now you can go out to the URL, nhtalkradio.com. I gotta have Kevin back. We barely scratched the surface. Next time, adios.